So the May CPI report, kind of a banger.
Kind of. Dude, this shit was popping.
Yeah.
You texted me this, and I didn't read the CPI report yet, which is funny because honestly, I'm the type of nerd that has that shit like on a ringer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you texted me. I look at it. I almost pissed my pants.
He sent me like 10 texts like, oh my God, yes, fuck yes.
It's the little things, guys.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the little things.
So CPI held flat in May from the month before April, increased 3.3% over a year. The core CPI, excluding volatile food and energy prices, increased 0.2% on the month and only 3.4% from a year ago. This was below analyst expectations,
Yes.
which expected, I think, a 3.5% overall number. So great news.
Great news. Flat out great news. May being a low inflation number isn't historically abnormal. In the seasonality adjustments, May is normally the lowest month.
Okay.
And people know that.
Okay.
But last May, it was 0.1. This May, it's 0.
Okay.
And the May before that, it was like 0.3, 0.4. So we're seeing that adjustment going forward.
That's good.
The main months that we need to look out for in the inflation months are going to be August, September. Those are big consuming months.
Okay.
August, September, if we get inflation to a 0.2 level in those August, September months, we're going to be looking real good. And we're going to be in the 2.5s to 3s.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about food and energy first, because
Hell yeah.
energy is something that I think is going to bring down CPI for the next few months. Joe Biden has recently talked about releasing gas from our national reserves, specifically in the Northeast, I think, as he's going to prepare for OPEC Plus to cut some of their output.
Yeah.
So that's going to help with our energy prices. And food, we just talked on one of our Patreon episodes recently about how Walmart, Target, and a bunch of other retailers have announced price cuts on a ton of new items. So I think like thousands of items. I think these, and so energy prices dropped 2% this month. Food prices increased only 0.1%.
Yeah.
I think we might see that at least over the next few summer months to keep inflation going down.
For sure. And I want to keep in mind, guys, February, food inflation was fat. March was 0.1. I said fat. February, it was flat. March, it was 0.1.
Yeah.
April, it was 0. May, it's 0.1. This is really good news.
Yes.
Because the inflation number for food year over year is only 2.1%.
Yeah.
That's where you want it to be.
Exactly.
So that means we're doing the right thing in regards to food, and we're on the right track for sure. The thing that I find most interesting is core CPI. So the Federal Reserve makes most of its assessments on inflation based off core numbers, which means inflation minus your food and your energy, because those are such volatile commodities that they don't see that as, intrinsic to the economic condition. So core inflation is down to 3.4, which is really great. But if you remove shelter from core CPI is 2.1.
Yeah.
Which shows us what? It's a housing problem.
Yes.
Just like everything else, it's a housing problem.
And we've known this. I think we might get lucky even on the housing front with prices for a while. I was looking into this. Apparently there was a spike. I don't know how I didn't know this before. There was a spike in permitting for multifamily buildings in 2022.
Oh, nice.
A ton of those still have not been finished.
And they're coming online
And
soon.
I think they're going to be coming through in the pipeline. So we might get a little bit of relief in housing. But even if we don't, I think the Fed knows that shelter is a lagging indicator.
They know that the shelter is a lagging indicator of like 6 to 8 months is what I read, right?
Yeah.
And so if the Federal Reserve knows that, they know that cutting rates sooner than later is going to be really important.
Definitely.
Because you can only have this much of a restrictive monetary policy for so long before you start feeling some negative effects.
Yeah.
The only reason we haven't felt the negative effects is because of our high immigrant figures. And immigrants have been able to really spur the economy way more than any damage high interest rates could do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's been our saving grace.
We've gotten super lucky that way. And so now I want to move from the inflation numbers to the Fed meeting that happened the afternoon after these inflation numbers came out, because it's interesting and it doesn't exactly jive with this message that inflation is coming completely under control, but only from a certain perspective. So the last time the Fed had a meeting and they published their notes and what they expect as far as cutting rates, they were expecting 3 rate cuts over the course of 2024. That was 3 months ago now. After this meeting, they came out and the median estimate out of the Fed like board members was 1 rate cut for the rest of the year. So that sounds bad, but I think the market and the market's reaction to the Fed's meeting shows that they don't really believe it. They think that if we get 2 more months of good CPI, maybe 3, the Fed's going to be ready to cut rates.
Yeah.
And that would leave us with enough time for at least 2 rate cuts on the year. Because the market spiked after CPI and it really held most of its gains after the meeting. So I think, right now the bets are in place for about 2 cuts on the year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful.
I'm also hopeful.
Yeah.
We need it. We need it to get more investment spurring to the economy. I'm glad the economy is growing, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But we need more long-term investment, which can only come with a lower interest rate environment, specifically regarding climate issues, housing issues.
Mm-hmm.
These things are necessary. These things require low interest rate environments.